The narrative of Paul, formerly Saul of Tarsus, has long been enshrined in Christian tradition as a tale of divine redemption. A zealous persecutor struck by a heavenly vision on the Damascus road, transforming into the apostle who spread the gospel to the Gentiles. Yet, when stripped of its supernatural veneer, Paul's story reveals darker undercurrents, a potential archetype of human ambition, psychological maneuvering, and opportunistic reinvention. Born into a privileged Jewish Roman context, trained as a Pharisee, and self-sustaining as a tentmaker, Paul initially wielded institutional power to violently suppress early Messianic Jews, not for profit but out of fanatical conviction. His conversion could be interpreted not as authentic spiritual awakening but as a calculated pivot, repurposing aggressive traits into a platform for influence within a burgeoning movement. This analysis delves into the psychological, behavioral, and human dimensions of this shift, emphasizing the spectrum from genuine remorse to cynical exploitation. By drawing parallels to both modern cult figures and historical analogs, we explore Paul as a possible con artist in religious garb, whose doctrinal innovations masked a quest for dominance, legacy, and control. The darker realities of Paul's pre-conversion mindset, fanaticism as a mask for dominance. Paul's early life, as depicted in New Testament accounts, Acts 7-9, 22, 26, Galatians 1, Philippians 3, paints a portrait of unbridled authoritarianism. As Saul, he operated with the backing of the Sanhedrin, entering homes to drag men and women to prison, approving executions like Stephen's stoning, and pursuing believers to Damascus with arrest warrants. This was no salaried role. Paul supported himself through leatherworking, making his actions a voluntary crusade fueled by ideological zeal. He viewed the Jesus followers as blasphemous threats to Jewish purity, justifying violence through self-righteous superiority. Psychologically, this aligns with authoritarian personality syndrome, characterized by rigid adherence to hierarchy and aggression toward outgroups. Paul's zeal beyond measure, Galatians 1 verses 13-14, suggests a narcissistic inflation, where enforcing orthodoxy provided validation and power. Yet, beneath the religious facade lurked potential sadistic elements. His impunity, stemming from Pharisee status and Roman citizenship, allowed unchecked intimidation, possibly deriving gratification from dominance. In behavioral terms, this reflects instrumental aggression, using violence as a tool for ideological control rather than mere enjoyment. Humanly, such behavior often stems from internal insecurities, a young, ambitious man channeling unresolved conflicts into fanaticism. The texts hint at no personal delight in suffering, but the pattern evokes bullies who rationalize harm as duty. Paul's later remorse, 1 Corinthians 15 verse 9, 1 Timothy 1 verse 13, could be genuine moral injury, a trauma from violating one's ethics, or a retrospective narrative crafted to legitimize his new role. Critically, this raises questions. Was his persecution a genuine defense of faith, or an outlet for a domineering personality seeking outlets for control? The conversion spectrum, genuine change or opportunistic facade. The Damascus event, a blinding light, auditory hallucination, and temporary blindness, marks the pivotal conversion. Tradition attributes it to divine intervention, but secular analysis reveals a range of possibilities. At one end, authentic transformation via cognitive dissonance, where the movement's resilience clashed with Paul's worldview, triggering an existential crisis. Witnessing unyielding faith amid persecution might evoke empathy, leading to moral realignment and reparative behavior, joining the oppressed to atone. However, darker interpretations dominate, Paul as an opportunist spotting a rising tide. The Jesus movement, despite suppression, was expanding beyond Judea, offering a fertile ground for influence. Psychologically, this resembles narcissistic adaptation, where a thwarted aggressor redirects energy into a new arena for self-elevation. His immediate retreat to Arabia, Galatians 1 verse 17, could indicate strategic planning, not reflection, time to craft a revelation narrative insulating him from scrutiny. Behaviorally, operant conditioning applies. Persecution yielded diminishing returns, guilt, resistance, while advocacy promised rewards, prominence, followers. Paul's post-conversion actions, assertive preaching, confronting leaders like Peter, Galatians 2, and centering theology on his personal insights, suggest a con man's playbook: build trust through charisma, impose vision, and demand loyalty. Human factors amplify suspicion. Fear of backlash, retaliation from victims, or divine judgment, a Pharisee's hellfire beliefs, might prompt a facade of change. Alternatively, exhaustion from violence could mimic epiphany, but opportunism shines. Paul, a Roman citizen with rhetorical skills, positioned himself as the apostle to the Gentiles, reshaping Judaism into a universal faith that elevated his role. This outside change for opportunity echoes reformed perpetrators in psychology, who adopt ally personas without internal shift, using manipulation disguised as guidance. Was Paul truly converted, or did he exploit vulnerability, turning the movement into his doctrinal empire? Contemporary comparisons. Paul is a prototype for modern cult manipulators. Paul's traits, aggressive past, charismatic pivot, doctrinal control, mirror modern cult leaders, highlighting a psychological archetype of repurposed sadism. These figures often justify initial harm ideologically, then channel it into manipulative authority, blending opportunism with con artistry. Jim Jones, People's Temple. From a minister advocating justice, Jones devolved into abuse, culminating in Jonestown's mass death. Like Paul's zeal-driven violence, Jones's ideological aggression masked narcissistic control. His transformation into Messiah parallels Paul's, repurposing dominance into a personal utopia, opportunistically exploiting followers' hopes, much as Paul might have seized the Jesus movement's momentum. Charles Manson, Manson family. Manson's criminal youth evolved into drug-fueled manipulation, orchestrating murders for apocalyptic visions. His aggressive history echoes Paul's persecutions, both converted to prophetic roles, using gregarious charm to redefine movements. Manson's con-like twisting of counterculture into violence mirrors Paul's doctrinal shift, potentially a darker intent to dominate through fear and isolation. Keith Raniere, Nexium. Posing as a self-help guru, Raniere enforced slavery and branding. His intellectual superiority akin to Paul's Pharisee zeal, the shift to cult dominance reflects opportunistic redirection, turning abuse into psychological control under a veneer of enlightenment, a con exploiting vulnerability, similar to Paul's theological imposition. Warren Jeffs, FLDS. Inheriting leadership, Jeffs enforced child abuse via revelations. His doctrinal enforcement parallels Paul's authorized violence. Both justified harm through superiority, with Jeffs' prison manipulations echoing Paul's letter-based influence, opportunistic legacy building. David Koresh, Branch Davidians. From outsider to Messiah, Koresh abused followers amid apocalyptic claims. His control reflects Paul's zeal. The Waco siege highlights how repurposed aggression leads to tragedy, questioning if Paul's vision was a con for power. Shoko Asahara, Aum Shinrikyo. Blending faiths into doomsday, Asahara's abuses culminated in terrorism. His transformation from marginal to authority mirrors Paul's, channeling aggression into manipulation, a pattern of opportunistic elevation through fear. These correlations underscore narcissism, intolerance, and psychological manipulation, where initial sadism evolves into cultic gratification. Historical comparisons, echoes across eras of religious opportunism. To comprehensively evaluate Paul, historical analogs reveal timeless patterns of transformation for power. Ancient and medieval figures often pivoted from aggression to religious leadership, blending genuine shifts with exploitation. Constantine the Great, Roman Emperor, 272 to 337 CE, a military conqueror known for brutality. Constantine's conversion, after the Milvian Bridge vision, 312 CE, mirrored Paul's Damascus epiphany. Was it divine, or opportunistic? He legalized Christianity, reshaping it into a state tool for unity, much as Paul universalized the faith. Psychologically, both repurposed dominance. Constantine's edicts enforcing orthodoxy echo Paul's intolerance, potentially a con to consolidate power amid empire's decline. Ashoka the Great, Mauryan Emperor, 268 to 232 BCE. From violent conqueror, Kalinga Wars massacres, to Buddhist advocate, Ashoka's edicts promoted nonviolence. Like Paul's remorse, this could stem from moral injury, but historians debate opportunism, using Buddhism to pacify a vast empire, redirecting aggression into doctrinal control, a parallel to Paul's theological empire building. Sabbatai Zevi, Ottoman Jewish Messiah, 1626 to 1676, a manic-depressive figure proclaiming messiahship, Zevi attracted masses before converting to Islam under threat. His initial zeal and revelations akin to Paul's. The forced pivot highlights opportunistic facades, reshaping Kabbalah for influence, then abandoning followers, exposing con elements in messianic claims. Simon Magus, 1st century sorcerer, per Acts 8 depicted as offering money for apostolic power. Simon's conversion attempt reflects Paul's era. If Paul was opportunistic, Simon embodies the darker side, using magic and charisma to exploit Christianity's rise, mirroring potential con artistry in doctrinal manipulation. Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, Wahhabi founder, 1703 to 1792, from reformer persecuting heretics to alliance with rulers, his zeal parallels Paul's. The transformation into ideological dominance, enforcing Puritanism via violence, raises questions of opportunism, channeling aggression into a movement for legacy. These historical figures illustrate the archetype, aggressive ideologues pivoting to leadership, often amid crisis, blending conviction with power grabs. Conclusion: the enduring enigma of Paul's intentions, lessons in human frailty and power's perils. Paul's legacy as Christianity's architect endures, yet this scrutiny unveils a multifaceted human, not merely saintly apostle, but potentially a masterful opportunist whose conversion masked darker impulses. Psychologically, his story embodies the tension between genuine epiphany and cynical facade, cognitive dissonance yielding remorse, or narcissistic adaptation seizing opportunity. Behaviorally, the redirection of authoritarian aggression into charismatic control suggests a con man's evolution, where doctrinal innovation served self-elevation, intolerance silenced dissent, and gregarious rhetoric built empires of influence. Humanly, factors like fear, ambition, and unresolved trauma drive such shifts, reminding us that religious transformations often intertwine sincerity with exploitation. Contemporary parallels with cult leaders like Jones or Manson expose the risks: initial ideological violence morphing into manipulative authority, fostering dependency under moral superiority. Historical echoes: Constantine's political pivot, Ashoka's imperial pacification, Zevi's messianic fraud, reveal this as a trans-era pattern, where figures exploit societal flux for dominance, reshaping beliefs to cement legacies. Paul's refusal of payment enhanced his aura, but did it conceal a deeper con, turning persecution's regrets into advocacy's gains? Ultimately, this evaluation warns of religion's vulnerabilities to human psychology. Paul's mindset, whether truly changed or opportunistically veiled, highlights how charisma can cloak sadism, zeal mask manipulation, and visions justify control. In exploring this spectrum, we confront uncomfortable truths. Great movements often arise from flawed individuals, their intentions a blend of light and shadow. By demystifying Paul, we foster critical discernment, urging vigilance against those who repurpose dominance in faith's name. His story, stripped bare, is a cautionary archetype, eternal reminder that behind divine narratives lie profoundly human, and sometimes darkly ambitious hearts.